Welcome everyone to this week's episode of Raise Your Profile. Today we'll be talking to Maureen Sydney, who is passionate about teacher well-being. She also that was part of her profession as well. I'll let her tell you guys more from her story. But today is going to be all about teacher well-being. So welcome everyone, and welcome Maureen. So good to have you here.
Hi there, and hi everyone else. I don't know where to start really.
Tell us the story. What's the story? How did you get to do what you do right now?
Very brief synopsis of my career. I started off, I got a degree in music, started off as a teacher in primary schools, and then I spent about a dozen years as an opera singer. And having decided I didn't want to do that anymore because I really missed teaching, I went back into teaching, into further education, and I had a fantastic 18 years there, and ended up leading a team at the higher education team. But then I decided that was getting very samey, and so I decided I needed to find a new challenge. I also, at that point, realised that the values of the institution I was working with were moving away from my personal values. And so that was another good sign that I needed to move on and do something new. So I retrained as a coach. And one of the things that they don't tell you at the beginning is what is your niche going to be? So I had to spend quite a lot of time thinking that through. And then the obvious thing was that I really knew education inside out, having worked with children from the age of nursery right up to 60 or 70 plus, because I'd taught from primary school right through to master's degree students. And so that was a key thing. But the other thing is that I'd always, when I'd ended up leading teams, I'd always been really passionate, made sure that my teams were well cared for, and I put their well-being at top of my to-do list. And so for me, it was always about making sure that systems and processes were such that they didn't make the job too onerous. And so when I decided to start working as a coach, that's where I decided to function. So I'd have two elements to my coaching career. I do coaching with individuals and helping them either with their career path, with relationship problems they might have in schools. I also help people we do group retreats, me and a partner, Karen, who's a partner friend of mine, and I also work with teachers in groups and in schools, working with them to teach them the basic tenets of well-being and how to look out for stress, etc. And near the end today, I'll tell you about my latest venture, which is a new Facebook group.
Oh, okay. Keep it for the end. Yeah. Keep it best for the end. That's amazing. So what are the main challenges you've encountered? What are the main things that you help teachers with? I'm sure if we have any teachers watching, they can relate to what you say. I personally have not been in this profession. What are the main challenges that they experience in terms of well-being?
I think teachers are so focused on other people that they lose sight of themselves very often. And they're so committed to their schools, their individual children, their children at home, their wider families, that they lose a sense of identity. And so one of the things that I'm really keen to do with teachers right from the start is draw them back into themselves, because it's really important that they know how important they are and how important their well-being is, because if they're not fit and healthy, then they're not fit and healthy enough to do what is a really, really challenging job.
Yeah, absolutely. And once you burn out yourself, you can't help other people anymore.
That's right. Yeah, definitely. And so a lot of my work is based on two angles, obviously the physical well-being, but I'm also very, very conscious about the mental health issues that pervade schools now. And currently with the lockdown situation, it's very, very difficult for teachers. You know, they are trying to manage a really impossible job of, many of them are educating their own children, but at the same time trying in lockdown to provide a really nice working environment for the children, and yet they'll be feeling really bad and guilty that they're not there with the children all the time. And I think that's causing an awful lot of stress. So that's why I set up my Facebook group. So I will talk about that now. So my Facebook group, I decided to set that up because I was aware that a lot of teachers were in this stuck position where they are working from home, lots of challenges around technology, and a lot of criticism from parents wanting to know when the children are going to be going back to school. I've got 2 grandchildren of my own, and I hear their parents, you know, one of them's back at school and the other one isn't. And the parents really understand, but at the same time, they're quite frustrated that they can't have their children back in school. So I decided that I wanted to help during this time. So I've set up this Facebook group called Teachers Revitalised.
Teachers Revitalised.
Teachers Revitalised. And the idea of the group is that teachers join, and then each day there is either a video or a tip or a capacity to share ideas and to share the frustrations that they're feeling. But most of all, I want it to be a space where people leave feeling, actually, I feel better because I've spent some time with other people that understand.
Yeah, yeah, in through the Facebook group.
That's right, yeah.
Okay. So, so if we'll provide the details at the end. So if anybody here listening is a teacher and you need some time, you have something to you want to share, you want to work on your well-being, then you can join this group, and I'm sure Maureen will be able to help. Okay, what about your retreats there? What about your group coaching? What is that all about?
Okay, in schools, I take I introduce people to a model called the PERMA model, which is about how to the 5 tenets of getting happy and staying happy, and that includes recognizing that we're not naturally positive, so we have to deliberately get ourselves into that state. Making sure that as teachers we remember to find activities that are going to put us into what I call our flow state. As a singer, I used to embrace that every time I got on stage, because it's an activity where you're just so into yourself that everything else ceases to exist. And it's important when teachers are really, really living very stressful teaching lives, that they've got an activity that they know that they can call upon that puts them in that flow state. For some people, it's running. For some people, it's gardening. For some people, it's listening to music. For some people, it's painting or playing a musical instrument. It doesn't matter what it is. It's that the teacher knows what it is that they can do to get them into that space where they relax and they refocus and they rejuvenate themselves, revitalize. And then it's also about helping them understand relationships. And I'd like to tell a little story that happened to me in one of my workshops. I was talking about the importance of having good, effective relationships. And I often use numbers to try and help people identify how good they feel they are coping with certain things. So this particular day, I said to people, so on a 1 to 10 continuum, how good do you think your relationships are? And afterwards, this lady came up to me and she said, that was really profound, because I realized that most of the time, most of my relationships are an 8 or a 9, but my relationship with my mum is way down at 1. And she said, I realized I've got to do something about that. So that's the sort of things that happen in the workshops. It's like these aha moments which really help people. I also make sure when I do the workshops that I don't just do one, I do a series of 4 in a school. So I build up a relationship with the staff. And so it was great to go back a few months later and ask this lady, how's your relationship with your mum? And she said, it's so much better. And so thank you. And I said, well, no, you've done all the work, but that's what I aim to do, is to just provide people with things to reflect on and to put into place if they think it's important for them.
just facilitate the process. And sometimes we need that external perspective, right? As this lady didn't realize that her relationship with her mom was affecting everything. Once something's not right in one area of your life, it affects everything else, right? That's a massive principle, let's call it that way, within coaching. And I really like the second step. So the second step was finding an activity that puts you back in flow, right? That was yeah. So whatever it may be, whether it's gardening or running or reading or something else. I mean, I think when you're in a profession, and I think it's the same even for the coaching profession or caring profession or any other profession, when you're in a profession, when you have to work with other people and you give so much, it's very easy to lose yourself and sort of be focused on everybody else apart from you. And as you say, also lose your identity. So you need to find something that is solely for you, and to gain back control of your, to go back to yourself, really. Yeah. So what are the other steps? You mentioned there are 5 elements.
And the other one is, and this tends to be quite easy for teachers, and one of them is having meaning in your life. And teachers go through a process with that, because they, initially I remember my first teaching job, I was so excited, so focused on the children. So my meaning was the job. But then when I had my first son, suddenly the meaning of life changed considerably. And there's a real adjustment between realizing there's a difference between teaching a classroom of children and then being completely responsible for this little baby that you've got to look after. And so there's also the stress that comes around adjustment, and then you have another child, so things change again, and then time goes on. And like me, I'm in the time of my life now where my children have grown up, left home. One of them's got children of their own. And so I think the process of life can often leave teachers quite flawed sometimes. For a long time, they might exist quite happily, and suddenly something happens in their life and it can really damage them and make them very, very stressed. For example, my ex-husband had 2 really serious breakdowns, and we realized, looking back, that that's because we were not taking care of ourselves individually and uniquely. So what I'm talking about in my coaching is very much based on my personal experiences, because I think to be an authentic coach, you need to have experienced stuff, because otherwise you have to have done the job as well to understand the pressures that people are under.
Yeah, absolutely. It works best when you base everything on your own experience and the troubles you've gone through and the troubles you've overcome. So what about if
at the same time,
go on.
So but it's really important as a coach that you don't spend lots of time telling people those experiences. People don't want to hear what I experienced. They want me to ask questions. So what's important for me is that I always stop and think, am I about to say something which is a piece of advice, or am I turning this piece of advice into a question because of the experience that I've had? So I wouldn't, for example, ever say to somebody, I think you should. It would be more, I've listened to you and I've noticed that you've mentioned this word 6 or 7 times. Do you know what word it is that you're using, which potentially is dragging you down a little bit? And invariably, people can tell me what the words are and why they've introduced them into their language and why they want to get rid of them. And so it's important that experience is there as a basis, but not as a guide, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Not make it about your client, but not about,
absolutely,
about you. It just helps you relate better, but it's not about them at the end. It's not about you at the end of the day. It's about them.
Not at all.
So I remember from speaking to you that there are occasions when teachers are not happy in their profession, perhaps they want to change. Is that something that you focus on still? I mean, I find it fascinating. While we're talking now, it dawned on me again that you've effectively changed career twice. You started out as a singer, then you changed to being a teacher in higher education, and now you're a coach. So you've changed career twice, and that is an incredible experience to have. So is that something you do as well, or
Yes, it is. And if I can just correct you, actually, I've changed my career a lot more times than that.
Oh, okay.
Because I was a primary school teacher. Then I made the transition to being an opera singer, which was a long journey. Then I became, then I moved into further education. But in that job, I had 10 jobs in 15 years. So, so I think that if we understand ourselves, then we can, and we reflect on stuff, we know when we need to move on. So yes, I feel that is something that I'm always listening to with people. And one of the important things with that is it's about checking your values. And if you are finding yourself unhappy in a job, then I can bet you bottom dollar it's because your values have shifted and they're not the same as the organisation you're working in. That sometimes is just about a school, because schools can have very, very different values. So it's important that you're constantly being aware of your values, and they change as you get older as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I just say something for all of you guys who are watching or listening to this, and you feel a little bit guilty perhaps that you haven't stuck to one thing all the time, or perhaps somebody else has made you feel guilty because you can't stick to one thing. I think life is all about experiences and exploration, and at the end of the day you need to find yourself, construct yourself, and find what you're really passionate about. And everything that you do, whether you've changed career once, twice, several times, you've held 15 jobs. I've personally had a lot of jobs, and I've changed and pivoted multiple times, and I believe it's part of my experience as well. And so if that's been part of your journey, to whoever, if you guys are watching this, then stop feeling guilty about this, or stop allowing other people to make you feel guilty about it, because ultimately it's about you doing what you're truly passionate about. And you can't think yourself into it. You're not born and say, oh, I'm going to be this or I'm going to be that. That's very, very, very rare. I mean, my mom knew she wanted to be an artist since she was 3, but that is extremely, extremely rare case. And she never changed career, but that is very, very rare. So if you don't know what you want to do, it's okay to change careers. It's okay to hold several jobs until you find the right one for you, because ultimately, if you're not happy what you're doing, you're not going to be able to help other people provide an excellent job, right?
Absolutely. And I think too, what can be an absolutely perfect job one year can be the worst job in the world the following year, because we change and circumstances change. And it's being bold and honest enough with ourselves to know that, yes, we can change and we can move on. So in answer to your question about 5 minutes ago, yes, I do work with people to help them identify whether at that point in time that's the place where they want to change, and I help them by asking them the right questions that they can ask themselves.
And as you said, it's usually when your values don't match the organization's values anymore, perhaps your circumstances change and another career, another job, maybe another institution will be better for you. I suppose a number of things going on there that it's between you and your client to discover whether it's about staying in the job, it's about changing institution because the values are different, or it's about changing career altogether.
And sometimes it's actually about staying, but getting comfortable with deciding to stay. So for example, there've been times in my life where I decided to stay because it was important for my children. So I wanted them to have, they loved living where we lived. And so it was important for me then that I thought about them above me. So it was then that's when I began to start thinking, so what can I do outside of the job that gives me some satisfaction as well? And that's where we get back to the flow activities, that we're not just focused on our job, because if we do, then there's a saying that, all work and all play and no play makes Jack a dull boy. And I think that's really true.
Yeah, Absolutely. So where is your focus today? Is it on the retreats or individual coaching or group coaching, or is it all of these things together? What is your focus?
My focus in terms of normality is that I do 50-50 working in schools and coaching in the retreats. But of course, at the moment, I can't do any of those things. So what I decided, I don't like to let the grass grow under my feet too much. So what I decided to do was that I wanted to set up a Facebook group, and that's been great as well, because I've had to learn new skills for that. I've had to learn how to use teleprompters. I've had to learn to be able to write lots of stuff on a weekly basis so that I can post things. So for me, coaching is also continually developing my skill base. So so I think what I'll talk about more now then is actually the my Teachers Revitalised Facebook group, because on Mondays we have a theme every week. Last week it was keeping active. This week it's thinking about being in the moment. So each week for the next 12 weeks, I've got a theme that's going to run through so that we're looking at the same thing for a week. On a Monday, I post a quote that's relevant for the theme and a little bit of a paragraph of thinking. On Tuesdays, I post a tip and encourage people to also post tips that they might want to share. On Wednesday, I do a video, and that lasts between 3 and 6 or 7 minutes, depending on the topic. And then Thursdays, it's about being a bit more thoughtful, reflecting on some of the things that we've talked about. Fridays, Feel Good Friday, I encourage people to share some of the things that have really happened well for them. And Saturdays, this is the other part of the training I do in schools that we've not covered yet, and that's about accomplishments. And the thing about teachers is they are constantly developing their skills. They've constantly got to do CPD so fast and furious that they rarely get the time to stop and savor. And they can go a decade and suddenly say, well, I've not learned anything, which is total nonsense. But because the job's so pressurized and they're surrounded by all these brilliant other teachers, you can find your confidence slipping because you think that you've not done anything. But just getting up every day and going and doing the job means that you've accomplished a great deal and you've really developed lots of transferable skills. So Saturdays are for savouring on Teachers Revitalised.
I like that. Saturdays are for savouring. I like that very much. Okay. So how can people contact you? Actually, before that, is there any tips you'd like to share to the teachers watching this? Obviously, you have a lot of tips, and once you talk to people individually, there's a lot of things you can work on together. But is there anything you'd like to share? Any social media tips that they can do immediately if they're feeling drained, burnt out, lost, identity lost, etc.?
Yeah, I think it's about sitting down quietly with a cup of coffee and saying to yourself, you really are okay. You're a great person, you're a great teacher. And what is it that really helps you get centered? Is it that you can get lost in a book? Is it that you like gardening and you can go and garden for an hour? Is it making a meal for the family and having the radio on? Is it sitting listening to music? Is it going for a run? Is it just going for a walk? Is it looking after your dog? And it's about trying to find those spaces where you can be on your own and listen to your own thoughts. Because I think it's about rekindling the love you have for yourself. And that's really important. And as teachers, we are constantly judging ourselves if we're not careful, because we never think we've done a good job, because there's always some child that we've not managed to get to, or we've not managed to do what we want to do with them. But it's trying to look at the bigger picture and think, actually, I'm doing an okay job. And at the moment, I think I really feel for for everybody, because everything's so much up in the air and they must be missing the children so much. No, really, I was thinking this morning, the teachers this year have lost so much opportunity. You know, they must be really sad that they haven't been able to spend all this quality time with the children. And at the end of the year, when they get all the gifts from the children, they know that's because they've done a brilliant job for them and they've made a difference. And that's been made really hard this year with the, so it's about saying to everybody, don't give yourself a hard time. This has just been one of those situations that nobody could have imagined. And so just give yourself some slack.
That's really good advice. I love that. That's really good advice. I think everybody needs to do that. But as you said, teachers have been so affected by what's been going on, and they, you know, and everything they couldn't do because of it. So thank you, Maureen. That was really, really good. So if somebody wants to work with you, whether one-to-one basis or book a retreat or book a group coaching, what's the best way to contact you? Can you?
Okay, they can contact me via you, because you've got my contact detail. They can also contact me by looking at Artios Coaching, www.artioscoaching.com. I'm also on Facebook as Maureen Sydney. That's my personal Facebook page. I've also got a business page called Artios Coaching, and it'd be great if people got onto there and then joined Teachers Revitalised group. It would be wonderful to have some more members.
Excellent. So are there any teachers watching this? If you're a teacher watching this, then please join Maureen's group. And I'm sure.
And if you're not a teacher but you've got friends or family that are teachers, then please share that with them too.
Definitely.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's been brilliant to be able to chat with you and talk with you again.
Likewise, I really enjoy this this chat, Maureen, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon. I wish you all the best in your coaching. I hope you're able to help a lot more teachers or whatever else you decide to do in the future. I think it's a never-ending journey, and you always change something else. But I'm sure whatever you do, you'll be able to help a lot of people. So thank you for that, and thank you for being here today.
Okay, virtual hug.
Virtual hug, yes. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for watching this.
And thanks everybody for listening. Bye.